Okay, welcome to chapter 27. We're going to talk about the Ottoman Empire, the Islamic empires. Today, of course, the biggest of all of the Islamic empires was the Ottoman Empire, so called because they were Ottomans. I have no idea why it's called that. The Ottoman people cruised out of another section. Let me remind you what you already know. This city would be the beautiful... Whoa, go back. This city would be the beautiful, vast metropolis of Constantinople. And in 1453, we already learned this, remember? The Ottoman Empire, like this brave fellow here and this guy here, they used a giant cannon to blast through the wall and lay siege. Well, they'd already laid siege. But to take over the city, 1453, Constantinople fell, and it was renamed Istanbul. Yes, it was Constantinople, but now it's Istanbul. So this gets us back to where we were. We are back to 1453. We are talking a little bit about a segment of time we've already discussed. So we saw Columbus, and we saw the Enlightenment and whatever. Now let's see what the Ottoman Empire is doing with this time. These guys are expansionists. They just want to go from place to place. I'm supposed to teach you several places that expand dramatically in size. But the key thing with the Ottomans is why they expand dramatically in size. The thing is, they wanted to prove they could fight for God. That's why I have this lovely picture of a mosque, so that you could see how they expanded in the name of religion and faith and whatever. They wanted to prove that they would be good, handy people. Now, we will talk in a little bit about how they actually treated minorities, which was, I don't know, not too bad for its day, I guess you could say. Discard my annotations. Now, let's go and let's see beautiful Google Earth. Here's Istanbul, and we will zoom out. Here we have the space, what's now Turkey. That is the main body of the Ottoman Empire. They'd started off up here, but we didn't care about them then because they were just pastoralists. Once they come down here, they matter a great deal. Now, natural places to expand, of course, along the top of Africa. Because along the top of Africa, you've got other Muslims, people that believe similar things. You've also got a lot of trade, and there's a lot of benefit to going along the top of Africa. As you might guess, they don't so much want to cross the Sahara Desert, except for individuals, because look at it. Look at it! Holy crap, it's so dry you can see it from this altitude. Oh dear. Yeah, so they don't want that so much, but they love the coast. The coast is beautiful and lovely. But that's easy to understand, too. This has a bigger impact on the history of the rest of the world. See, from here in lovely Istanbul, they also decide that they are going to conquer Europe. How much of Europe? Well, they want to conquer all of it. And I think you could probably figure out what direction they're going to go. Yes, they will come up to the right side of the Black Sea between the Black and the Caspian Seas, but that's not the most effective way to go in. The best way is to go right across the Bosphorus, through Greece, Macedonia, and go up here through Europe. Now, a few important things happen in southeastern Europe. This area is called the Balkan Peninsula, this giant fat thing that you see just to the west of Istanbul. Huge thing, including Greece. Of course, you know that Italy's on the Apennine Peninsula, but that's not what we're talking about. The Balkan Peninsula. The Balkans, well, they don't want to be conquered. It turns out that this is not the most exciting thing that's ever happened in their days, and so they try to fight off the Ottomans. They make a noble attempt. Most of them fail. In fact, all of them fail. The Ottomans will manage to get all the way up to what's now Austria. The most famous of these guys who fights off the Ottomans is a guy named Vlad Dracul. He's known in history as Vlad the Impaler. In order to... hold on a sec. In order to prove his superiority to his enemies and to frighten other enemies, try to get them to not come, Vlad the Impaler would take people that he captured, and he would get these stakes that stuck out of the ground, and he would put people on the stakes. Ah, ah, right? Do the sound effects help? And he would stick them through the people. So down you go, and here's your body, and there's a big old stake sticking through it. And you would die a slow and painful and horrid death. And then when other people came over to conquer Vlad Dracul's territory, they would see the impaled people. See, they're seeing it. And once they see it, they'd be like, oh no, I don't want to do this. I don't want that to end up being me. And the idea is they would be frightened into leaving. Unfortunately for poor Vlad Dracul, who is remembered as a hero by the people of Romania, he lived in a really cool castle. This thing was nifty. I mean, you had the castles like up here on this thing, looking castle-y, right? Man, I screwed that one up. Yeah. Good thing I wasn't hired for my art schools. And then there was a cliff. So it's about 2,000 feet from up at the top all the way to the ground at the bottom. And a European guy named Abraham Stoker was cruising by, and he saw that and thought, that will be the perfect castle. So he inquired, he said, who used to live there? Vlad Dracul. And of course, one of his titles, going from his last name, is the Dragon, Dracula, and it was perfect. He was just too perfect. Somebody who used to impale people for Bram Stoker. So Stoker named his novel after him, and he became Dracula. Dun da da. That's not going to be on the test, but most people find it interesting. Anyway, Austria keeps fighting these suckers, and Austria will never become a truly powerful nation because they will spend the entire Renaissance and the entire centuries after the Renaissance fighting off Ottomans as Ottomans try to take over their homes and kill them and cause them problems and make them cry. Yeah, anyway. The most important conquest we talked about briefly already, that's the 1453 conquest of Constantinople. And the most important conqueror is a dude named Suleiman. They called him Suleiman the Magnificent, which is just a great title. He is not the guy who took Constantinople, but he is their greatest conqueror. And you should at least recognize his name and be able to say, hey, that dude was an Ottoman. Now, the Devshirme. When the Ottomans would conquer people, of course, they're mostly conquering, they're conquering North Africa, but those people were more willing to be conquered. The Europeans didn't like it so much. And so once the Ottomans conquered the Christian area in Southeast Europe, they demanded a tribute. Pay us, tribute. But what was their tribute? What was it going to be? What did they demand? Gold, silver? No. Young boys. Now you're probably thinking all kinds of creepy things like, what, did they eat them? No. No, instead, what they did is they raised them. These boys that were given in tribute were raised to be Muslims. And, I think you've already figured out, to be live-in hostages, We've seen this before in world history. Remember? The Inca would kidnap people and hold them and keep them in order to discourage rebellion. Some of them were also used as slaves for the Sultan. Sultan has tons of wives. He needs a lot of slaves to feed them grapes, or I don't really know what they did. Clean the furniture? Vacuumed? Just kidding. Vacuums hadn't been invented yet. But the biggest one, the one most likely to show up on the test and the most interesting, are the Janissaries. I did not mean to cross that off. The Janissaries are a group of people who, they're soldiers. These young, formerly Christian boys used as soldiers on the front lines as they cruised into Southeast Europe. So if you're sitting here, you're King, Steve, up here, being like, okay, throw the boiling tar on the invaders. You realize that it might be one of your own children on the front lines of the Janissaries. One of your own kids coming. Now, of course, the kids don't question it because they've been raised this way. They've been essentially brainwashed into being in the military. Incredibly brilliant, not so holy by our standards, but they were not our culture. And so that's what the Janissaries did. Now, last but not least comes the religion. They had really, really large numbers of Christians and Jews. By the way, that was a number sign long before it was a hashtag. But in case you've never seen it as a number sign, that's a number sign. Or at least I tried to make a number sign. There we go. Okay, so there are large numbers of Christians and Jews, of course, because they conquered Christian and Jewish territories. Now, like the older Muslims, the ancient Muslims, these guys believed in Jimmy. What those are protected peoples. So they had every freedom. They had complete autonomy to worship as they wished, even try to find converts, as long as they paid the jizya. I am sure I spelled that wrong. This is the tax. Remember, we've discussed this once before. If you are not a Muslim, you have to pay the non-Muslim tax. And that's the way it was. So for the age, for the 15 and 1600s, that is pretty religiously tolerant. Of course, once we have the Enlightenment in the 1700s and Voltaire invents true freedom of religion the way we understand it, that is not even close to religious tolerance. And so by our standards, not so good. So how did they treat religious minorities? Just fine, as long as they paid their taxes. All right. Is good. I will see you later.